Penrith.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to speak in support of the Transport Administration Amendment Bill New South Wales, Motorways Bill 2024. Speaker, with the introduction of the New South Wales Motorways Bill, I'm proud that we're making our first major step to reform the toll mania that we inherited from the former government. The former government are the authors of this cost of living nightmare for Sydney motorists. The former government spun this tangled web of privatisation that has become the source of great stress on family budgets right across Greater Sydney. This is causing Sydney families to leave jobs they love and move away from family and friends because their toll bills are basically just too high. If you think that the situation is bad now, the current arrangements mean that the financial pain will only get worse and worse as many of these toll prices continue to rise, Speaker, for another 36 years, all the way out until 2060. The independent toll review by Professor Alan Fells and Dr. David Cousins found the process for setting tolls was flawed and lacked transparency, that tolls are too expensive with the greatest impact on Western Sydney. The review found that tolls are too rigid, they're too complex, they're unfair and don't operate as a system. The government's toll reform aims to get a fairer deal for drivers, a better deal for drivers, to put Sydney motorists first. Speaker, the former government have a track record of standing in the way of helping Sydney motorists with their toll bills. They took a stand against the people of New South Wales when they failed to support the government's $60 toll cap. Despite creating the cost of living nightmare, they tried to stand in the way of toll relief that in just 1 year is already offering 570,000 New South Wales motorists $160 million of vital cost of living relief. And in my electorate of Penrith alone, it equates to $859,000 so far. So they were against toll relief, Speaker. Now those opposite are threatening to stand in the way of toll reform. With its sensible long-term solution that will get a better deal for Sydney motorists. That means once again standing in the way of putting more money in the pockets of Sydney families. So why is the opposition opposed to getting a better deal for drivers? We found out in an ABC Sydney radio interview with the Shadow Roads Minister from the other place just last week, where it was revealed that the Shadow Minister doesn't think Sydney tolls are too expensive. I can just imagine any driver with a big toll bill who was sitting in their car last Tuesday would have been raging abuse at their radio and banging their steering wheel out of frustration, just out of sheer frustration. But how out of touch? It was a very awkward interview because the Shadow Roads Minister would not answer the most basic question, which meant the interviewer had to indeed ask it 4 times. The question was, do you think Sydney-siders pay too much to drive on our roads? The first time the question was asked, the Shadow Minister refused to answer the question directly and started talking about the huge opportunity for toll reform, but no answer on whether the prices were too high. She was asked the question again, do you think we pay too much? Again, she would not answer the question and again tried to deflect to the opportunity to reform the toll network. On the third attempt, once again, no acknowledgement that prices were too high, no acknowledgement that Sydney drivers are suffering under the weight of their toll bills, and finally, Speaker, on the fourth attempt by the journalist, we got closer to the former Roads Minister's real views on tolling, when she said that for world-class motorways, you have to pay the price. It doesn't come for free. So there you have it, Speaker. The tolls are not too high. You have to pay the price, but when the price is much higher, and especially if you live in Western Sydney, well, I say, tell that to a constituent that I spoke to last week who just claimed her toll rebate and received $900. She thanked me profusely and said her kids will now have a brighter Christmas. Well, I say to you, come and tell her it's a price she has to pay. Speaker, when the former Treasurer Matt Keane was challenged on the former government's sneaky plan to introduce two-way tolling on the Sydney Harbour Bridge and Tunnel, and I'm really glad that the member for Davidson went there, he was quick to deflect and talk about wanting to lower the burden of tolls across Sydney and making driving around Sydney more affordable for everyone. But now, Speaker, here we are in government and we're doing the hard work on reforming the toll network, and we're faced with a coalition shadow roads minister who doesn't think tolls are too expensive. That means we have a shadow minister in a very strange position of saying, on one hand, the opposition supports the toll reform, but on the other hand, doesn't think that the toll prices are too high. Speaker, if the opposition's idea of toll reform isn't about getting a better deal for drivers, then what is it about? As the Shadow Minister acknowledged later in the ABC interview, the former government took their plan for toll reform to the last election and you lost. It's no wonder, Mr Speaker, if the opposition doesn't think New South Wales motorists deserve a better deal, then who are they trying to get a better deal for? The toll road concessionaires? Toll reform that doesn't achieve a more equitable, better deal for drivers is not toll reform. This is a vital first step that we're taking. We're not saying that this bill is the silver bullet, as the member for Davidson said. We're saying this is a vital first step. We're doing it and we're getting on with the job. The Minns Labor government is getting on with it. We want a better deal for drivers, just as we said we would. This New South Wales Motorways bill is an important part of this reform. I note now that the opposition are not opposing the bill, but what I would like to say is I do commend the bill to the House.
The question